Daggerheart Campaign Prep. How does it work and how does it differ from running other fantasy RPGs?
In the end, what's the difference?
Critical Role's Darrington Press is currently playtesting Daggerheart, a new fantasy RPG that mixes elements of tactical and combat-focused RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons with narrative-focused and collaborative storytelling rules similar to Powered by the Apocalypse-driven games. Now, in our last video about Daggerheart, we talked about some of the strengths and weaknesses of gameplay, and I mentioned that my players loved the game system so much they wanted to kick off a Daggerheart campaign. So how exactly does one run a Daggerheart campaign exactly? Well, instead of the DM being given the task of creating a world and storyline for the players to explore, the Daggerheart playtest offers some alternative methods to world building, drawing heavy inspiration from The Quiet Year, a great collaborative storytelling RPG. If GMs want, they can collaboratively build a map and world with their players, choosing to let the players populate the world with locations pulled from the character's back history and locations suggested by the DM. Basically, the DM prints off a map, plunks it down in front of the players, and then has the players populate the world and describe various locations. Now, for my Daggerheart campaign, I decided to pull a long gestating campaign idea from my stash and run a skyship campaign, with basically the players finding a skyship and using it to explore islands in the sky. To create the world of the campaign, I used a random map generator to create a continent divided into 5 distinctive parts, with 3 separate countries and a few wild areas. And of course, this doesn't count the islands in the sky. We'll get to that later in the campaign. Now, as a note, Daggerheart does provide some foundations for a campaign world within their play notes and a few maps that GMs can use as, default maps for this world, but I largely wanted to try this collaborative world building instead. While I had some vague ideas about how the world of the game would function, I decided to let the players figure out the rest of the details. So, for my Session 0, I filled out about 2 pages worth of questions and prompts about the world, asking the players some broad questions about the world and how it functions. These prompts ranged from having the players name the countries, to asking them a few questions about things like government, culture, and even the kinds of monsters that roamed in the wild. From these prompts, a few interesting ideas and potential storylines emerged. The 3 countries of the world, which were generally themed towards various core elements, had a lot more tension than I anticipated, and the players decided that there was actually a recent war between 2 of the countries, and that both of those countries were ruled by autocrats of some kind. They also provided themselves with an easy reason to visit a dangerous region of the world, with that region being home to the only known supply of magic material needed to make skyships fly. They don't even have a skyship, but they know that they're eventually going to need to fuel this thing. They even came up with the idea that one of the wild areas of the world was actually a giant country-sized hole in the continent where the Sky Islands had been pulled from. Now, another big surprise for me was that when asked to name the known skyships of the world, and, to provide some context, in this game, there's only 6 known skyships, making them kind of like celebrities, only giant artifacts in the sky, based on how well known they are within the world. So I asked the players to name those skyships, and the players largely offered up vaguely sinister plot hooks, which obviously would put them in conflict with the ships when they entered that world. They also provided a potential in-game goal. When I asked them about a great threat that a 7th skyship would herald, they came up with the plummeting, a doomsday event where the islands in the sky would fall down to the ground and kill everyone. So the result of this world building session, which took about 90 minutes, was that the players had instantly bought into the world. They were the ones who had come up with the cultures, the plot hooks, the conflicts, even the opening story arc, which emerged when I asked the players to explain their connections between each other. Only one player character had a backstory that involved a quest, and the players kind of each glommed onto it and explained how they had come together to join her. So, a couple weeks later, we jumped into the first proper session of the campaign itself. Within my story notes, I tried to leave prompts for my players to help them fill out details about the world that I just didn't want to come up with, ranging from details about what kind of forest they were traveling in. They went with a giant redwood forest, to describing the nature of a nearby walking mound with a magic item on top of it, and I will note that a walking mound, not at all similar to a shambling mound. Honestly, other than reminding myself to let the players fill in the blanks of the world periodically, prepping for a homemade Daggerheart session wasn't much different than creating a D&D or Pathfinder session. Now, I will note that the playtest has relatively limited adversary options compared to things like the D&D Monster Manual, and that's to be expected. This is a playtest. And the encounter building itself is a bit kind of loosey-goosey. Things are divided by tiers, and you're basically encouraged to either come up with a strong solo enemy for them to face, and they have some templates on what to use or a few pre-built options, or you come up with adversaries equal to the number of players, and that's basically how that all works. But the game system itself largely makes individual encounters a little bit self-balancing based on things like how you can only do so much damage to a player in a given turn. So the balance not quite as important and granular than things like CR ratings in D&D. I also printed off a close-up of a map so players could continue to fill out location names when they heard about them in the world, giving them more places to go and also providing them kind of with reminders of what else they have to do. My players really love the general collaborative world building that Daggerheart offers, and I think that's something that I'm going to use moving forward regardless of what game system I use. If I'm coming up with a campaign setting, I might as well let the players have some of the fun too. I think that within the playtest, the campaign support tools are still kind of a work in progress, but they do their job for folks who want to keep playing Daggerheart through the playtest process, and I'm sure things are going to continue to get ramped up and built out as they finish up the actual Daggerheart product. So, have you started a Daggerheart campaign? Let us know some of your tips and tricks in the comments section, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.